Hey there. I figure it's time for just an independence update. It feels like things have been slowed down or, stuck on hold right now, but it's anything but. And it's not so much from the behavior of independence supporters, but by watching the behavior of the independence opponents. And by those opponents, I mean legacy media, of course, the old mainstream with their selective coverage. And some of the other people that are suddenly coming out of the woodworks, and one I want to mention in particular is Jason Kenney. And you know what? I like Jason Kenney, or I did. I think he did great stuff when he was with the Taxpayers Federation. I think he was a fantastic member of parliament. But then he came provincial and things kind of all unraveled. I think he did a good job in merging the parties too when he brought them together. But then, his behavior then and then since. Now, again, to be fair, he's never pretended to be an independent supporter. Um, Fine, but he's turned into this de facto opposing voice to the independence movement. And legacy media gives him all this time. Why? He's a retired former premier. So he was on the news last week going on basically, and there's the interesting thing. He was saying that there's nothing there, that the independence movement is just a few thousand of the same old people who push it all the time. Well, then what are you afraid of? What are you worried about? Wouldn't the best way to put the independence movement to bed be to hold a referendum so they only get 3,000 votes and then everybody can say, see, look at this, it's been a waste of time. But no, they are in attack mode. And that's why I said, when you're getting the flak, you're over the target. They're getting nervous. They're getting afraid. And on the other side of the coin, you've got the other hero of Alberta, Thomas Fabio Lukaszuk, with his little elbows up forever Canadian petition efforts. So that's been funny because, again, he's getting all sorts of press and all sorts of coverage, but he doesn't seem to be going anywhere. He's now doing a tour in a motorhome where he's going to hit the smaller towns to get more signatures for his petition. Now, he's got to get well over 300,000 signatures for this thing to work. He talked like nearly a month ago about saying we're going to release how our numbers have been doing right away. We're just calculating it. We're just figuring it out. We're just organizing. Yeah, you're into the final month of your 3-month chance to do this, and they're still refusing to release their numbers. Their numbers stink. There's no getting around it. If their numbers were any good, he'd be shouting it from the rooftop. So why all the effort then? Why all the driving around and spending? Well, he's building up a political movement. Why, when their support for that, for example, is really strongest in the big cities. In the rural areas where independent support is very strong, if you were looking to have an anti-independence petition, which he has, you would stick to the urban areas. Yet he's going to the areas where support's weakest. It's not like he's going to build support. You're trying to petition. Well, what he's doing, though, is campaigning. He's meeting people. He's setting up. This is how you set up a new political party. This is how you set up organizations. When you look at the couple of people across the floor from the UCP, they're desperately trying to start a progressive conservative party again. And they're not really getting anywhere. But I could see these guys all allying and put themselves together to a little new liberal opposition. And then I saw this junk poll that came out of this Cardinal polling company, whatever. They're just a goofy company. But it said, and it had this hypothetical polling. Well, hypothetical polling. Well, what? It's a hypothetical that Alberta doesn't have borders, hypothetical that there's 367 days in a year. Where do we want to go with this sort of stupidity? What a stupid navel-gazing exercise. Yet it caught a lot of attention because, of course, the hypothetical results were bizarre. It polled based on there being a progressive conservative party in Alberta. And under that supposed situation, again, this party doesn't even exist right now. It would pull 30% of the vote, and the head and Inchies NDP, which has been in the crapper, would suddenly pull ahead and potentially win government. Not to mention the Republican Party, which, again, seems to be Cam Davies in an empty bank account at this point, would take 11% or more in the province to really split the vote up. Just weird. They're pulling out all the stops. Why? Because the independence movement is marching ahead, despite getting no legacy media coverage. I mean, watch the Alberta Prosperity Project. I mention them all the time because they are the most organized group on the forefront of the independence movement. And they are holding meetings all over the place. They're packing the halls. They're packing the rooms. They're doing exactly what Fabio Lukaszuk can't do. And they haven't even gotten to the point where they're allowed to have a petition yet. Look on the federal front, as I said in my last video, that the federal government's going after the notwithstanding clause. It's bizarre and it's crazy, but it's great for the independence movement. Because if you really want to show a centralized, Moscow-esque CCCP government that wants to just take all control into the center, get rid of the notwithstanding clause, which was a condition of Alberta signing on with the Constitution and the Charter of Rights. As well, though, a little more distressing, but it's showing the direction of the federal government. They're bringing back their censorship bill, their online censorship bill. They want to control the internet. They're trying that again under Guilbeault. This authoritarian, centralized government, is that going to reduce independence thinking in Alberta? I know we still see the hardcore independence people. Danielle Smith has to support independence. No, she doesn't. She was not elected to do that. Do you want to give that slim chance to have that goofball Nenshi become premier? Turn the UCP into an independence party. That'll do it. That'll do it. But she's doing everything we can expect from a non-independence party premier right now. She's bringing the fight to Ottawa. She's losing all the time. But she's showing, she's splatting against the wall over and over and over again. You know what happens every time Danielle Smith goes to Ottawa, fights with them, and loses? More people realize that independence is the way out. Remember, our best polls, real polls, good polls, show 30% support for independence. Great. A third of Albertans. Maybe it's grown a bit since then. I suspect it has. Maybe we're getting closer to 40%. But that's still a good chunk away from the 60% or so we really need. So why? Well, people want to keep trying everything. They just want to pull out the stops and try every possible tactic. I call them reluctant separatists. You know, the people who just want to make sure there's every possible other option has been used up before they go there. Well, Smith is using those options up. It's kind of a negative way to campaign in a sense, but she's using those options up. The important thing is we get the referendum. And that's something that's a little at risk. And there's somewhere, I think, whether intentional or not, yes, the Smith government screwed up when they put it in their own referendum legislation that it has to comply with the Constitution, and now it's thrown it into the hands of a judge, and we can't trust the bloody judges to find out if we can even petition for this by November. It added another roadblock. In reality, even if the judges rule against, that's where I think Smith has to stand up, and not even necessarily standing up as an independent supporter, but say, that's it. No, we're not allowing these appointed judges to stop a democratic exercise in this province. The province will call the referendum, or we will just allow the petitioning, and I don't care what the judges say. Again, Alberta's got to take more of that attitude of, what are you going to do about it? What are you going to do about it? So, again, if it's just a few thousand people, Mr. Kenney, well, you got nothing to be afraid of. Lee, we need this referendum. But if the courts shoot it down, that is when the pressure has to go strongly on the UCP and Smith government to make sure that referendum is held one way or another. And that doesn't mean screaming with the pitchforks, going to the UCP AGM and trying to pull the premier down. The usual chronic malcontents tried that crap last year. Smith won over 90%. Don't do it. You're wasting time and energy. But pressure them. Pressure your local MLA. Pressure your representatives. Make it visible as possible. Promote groups like the Alberta Prosperity Project. And that referendum will come. It says so much that the opponents to this aren't just opposing independence. They're opposing giving Albertans the chance to vote on it. That shows fear. That shows a lack of confidence. That shows the reality that this movement is real. That this movement presents a real threat to the people invested in the status quo. So yeah, we're going the right way, guys. We're over the target. They're getting scared. And this battle is going to get worse. And they're going to keep pulling out all the stops. Legacy media, dried up old politicians like Lukaszuk and Kenney, and every other person, again, who's invested in doing quite well with the status quo. So we have to watch for that. We have to push back against that. But boy, we're making ground. So don't just watch the news. Don't just see what's going on. Interpret it. Read into it. The organization of the Alberta Prosperity Project, as I said, they're still packing rooms, even as quiet as the political front seems right now. That says so much. I mentioned I'm booked for a few more spots to speak, and I'd gone to one in Longview, and it was packed full. By the way, I had a gentleman who's organizing out in Saskatchewan will order a whole bunch of my books, by the way, the Sovereigntist Handbook. I'm thrilled. Thank you, Ed Ramsey. He's organizing out there in Saskatchewan. No, it's not. Let's not forget them. And that book I wrote, I should throw my plug. I'll have a link to it in the video description. The Sovereigntist Handbook, giving the directions on how to get there, because we really need to organize effectively. We're still actually in the early parts of this battle, even if it feels like it's been going on for a long time. But I wanted to just put out a message of optimism, a message of looking at what's going on and realizing what this means when they're getting so desperate to try and keep us from having the chance to vote on this. So keep at it, keep pushing, keep watching, and not just watching Smith, not just watching independent supporting activists, but watching the opponents, because they're telling the tale so effectively with their actions.